If we were to look at a number of different domains, and this one specifically is focusing on data, you look at the diagram, you can see that the first is around the data-driven culture. Secondly is about data analytics and technology. Thirdly is around data literacy. And finally, the last is around data governance. Always a very important part and often overlooked. I'll cover each of these in a little bit more detail as we go through. And if I was just to say that you can see from a basic level through to a more advanced level. Okay, let's go to the next, please. So in terms of the key pillars to establishing a data-driven culture, and keeping in mind that there's lots of different sort of levels of maturity in the audience and across organisations in general, it doesn't need to be a big bang approach. If you're a smaller organisation, it's really what suits yourselves. And then for those organisations that are bigger and more mature, it's probably a bit more of an effort. But conceptually, it applies to all. So firstly, it's around the leadership competency, just making sure that people understand. They may not be technical data science type people, but they understand the business and they're trying to drive business insights and innovation. And then from there, how can data and analytics help with that? And that buy-in is really important. Secondly is the skills. Skills are always super important. You need some people there to help you on the journey. Again, if it's a smaller organisation, just a few people, can be upskilling someone that sits within the organisation itself. If it's a large organisation, there could be teams of people doing that. Around the team structure, make sure that there's clarity in terms of what needs to be done. Same as any business, really. It's no different if you think of your own businesses and how things are set up. You'll have different roles and responsibilities across the team. No difference with data and analytics as well. So there could be just one person has certain responsibilities, or it could be a group of them, and there's segregation of responsibilities across those. And then finally, it's around training. And training is again important. And all organisations, including ours, including the industries that we work with, training is continuously ongoing to make your people better, and they can deliver better outcomes. And ultimately, it's about helping the business grow. Okay, if we go to the next, please. Looking again about how to cultivate a data mindset, and looking just at a basic level and focusing purely on the left-hand side, data-driven culture. So some of the indicators that we would see, or some of the sort of perceptions within the organisation, there is an interest for data and analytics. I'd say actually just about every organisation we work with has an interest in data and analytics. There's a use of data to understand the cause of outcomes of business decisions, somewhat, maybe more fully. And then lastly, there's a recognition of the value that data can help in terms of the business, but it may not be developed as fully as it could be at an organisational sense. A couple of different points to look at. Leadership competency, always important, as I said before. You need someone at the front, up the top, understands it, can talk it in the sense of the benefits that it drives, creates the excitement, gets the buy-in from the rest of the team. The right type of team structure to make sure things can be done properly, the right types of skills, and then the right types of training, all of those working together to build the team and the people. If we go to the next plan here, actually it's quite a, I would say, very conservative plan. It's done over 3 years. Such things we could implement within a year. But again, it depends on the organisation. A small organisation can be much more nimble as well. But defining that competency at the top, most important, and usually once that's in place, everything will flow. Getting the team structure in place. A less mature organisation can just be upskilling 1 or 2 people to have those skills in to help drive some of that change. Bigger organisations, aligning that team structure to the business needs, and then hiring appropriately to help develop that based on the demand. Having the right types of skills, make sure those skills are continuously being updated. It's an area, just like IT and technology in general, constantly undergoing change. Skills need to be updated, and training, of course, making sure that those skills are being updated. And I would say, again, on the training side of things, there's lots of really great programs out there in the run by Singapore government, which are free, and others out there that you can tap into. If we look at it quickly, 3-year plan, leadership competency, roughly about first year. As I said, you could probably do this in a couple of months, relatively about 6 months. Team structure could actually start flowing in year 1, but in here it's being shown as year 2, getting it all right, getting the right people on board and so on. And then the training is an ongoing process, and you're continuously reviewing this, say, about an every 6-month basis. And this is what we would do ourselves in our own business. Okay, if we go to the next, please, Nev. Okay, second is around the data literacy level. So there's perhaps the context, no real clear articulation of a data proficiency framework. Employees are using operational data to do basic analysis. And there's some type of analysis that is being done, but a lot more could be done as well. So again, some of the areas to start with is looking what sort of data literacy do we have, and you know, it's pretty straightforward stuff. How many people have done analytics before? What sort of analytics is being done? Is it just using Excel, which is great? Is there some type of visualization being done, or is there some, you know, really interesting sorts of skills when we get into some of the coding languages and so on? Establishing the program. So once you've identified in the previous the team structure, what sort of people do you want to have in place? It's then which people do you want to upskill and make them as the sort of the face of it for you in the future. And often within organizations, there's lots of people that are very keen to do that. And within our own organization, I would say there's a lot of really bright young guys that can easily take this up. Communication barrier is always a big one. So there's always a disjoint between technical data science people and business people. You must always be aware of that. In our own teams, I always tell the young guys in the team that you can talk as technically as you want, but if no one understands you, it doesn't help at all. So communication is always a big one, and keep things simple, talk clearly to each other, and you need someone in the team that can help do that, because sometimes there's data science guys can be a little bit, and IT data type people can be a little bit too technical. Okay, let's go to the next. If we looked at the plan again, so again, over a 3-year period, assessing the data literacy across the business, sort of starting relatively quickly in the first quarter, getting the program in place and looking at what needs to be done again over the first year. Communication barrier, it's set as a distinct item, but in reality, it's a continuous process that evolves throughout time, over the entire time. And then looking at some of the other areas, so you know, the champions, the ongoing assessments and so on are continuously ongoing as well. To move to the next. To people that worked with us on the GTP program, I don't think any of this will be a surprise to you. This is the way we like to do it. There's many ways to do it, I would say. This is the way we do it. It works very well. You know, looking at it, it's really around a continuous approach, and it's exploring as you go along within the context of not being time wasting or resource wasteful. So it needs to have a very clear view on what sort of value proposition, what are the outcomes you're trying to have in place, and what you want to achieve at the end of that. So the first, as all that worked with us, is discovering. As I said, data and analytics is never the leading question. It's always how can data and analytics help an organization do what it needs to do as a business. So that discovery phase is really important, looking at what the strategic objectives are of the business, what do the different business users need, and many of these are not data science type people, but they've got very clear objectives and priorities in their mind. And then from there, starting to understand what could we do from a data and analytics perspective that will help that. And that's why you need that skill of a data science type person, because they can think of it in a slightly different way, but at the same time, you need to merge them with what the needs of the business users are. Next, getting into defining. So, you know, what is the vision? What sort of success criteria do you want? I remember Kelly from Sentosa outlined that very clearly. But what are we trying to achieve at the end of this? Doing data science for the sake of doing data science is just a waste of time. It must always be about trying to improve outcomes. And as we've always said, cost, revenues, driving efficiencies, but it must have a clear outcome. And these will have clear outcomes as long as they're done properly. Getting in then into the POC, and how do we want to structure that? How do we deliver it? What do we need to do weekly, daily, and so on over the period of the 2 to 3 months we're working on the POC, to make sure at the end we've got something that really delivers value and it's not just a waste of time, and nobody will buy into that. And then finally, you deliver that with a very structured plan. And at the end of it, if it's done correctly, there's some really cool outcomes that can be shown, and that starts driving change in the organization. People go, hey, that's really interesting, and we'd like to see more of that. We'd like to do some other things. And that's how you create that sort of catalyst for change in the organization and get the buy-in from the top, and you can keep moving forward with it. Okay, if we go to the next. Change management is really important. It's about just ensuring longevity and sustainability in these things. So again, it's not to do something like any business action you undertake. You're not doing something just as a one-off shot, or very rarely, maybe sometimes, but it's very rare. In general, it's part of a strategy. And data science, data transformation, data and analytics is part of a strategy to grow the business. So change management helps with that process. A couple of different areas. At the beginning, define what your strategy should be, and keeping in mind, again, for a small organization, might be very simple. Could just be that we're going to talk to each other at our weekly meetings and give an update of what's going on. For a bigger organization, there will be different sets of areas to look at. Prepare the team. Team can be 1 or 2 people, can be a large team, depending again on the size and the need. And then the sponsorship model. The sponsorship model is the person that's going to help you get this through. Generally, it's a senior person. Generally, it's right up at the top, and they will help articulate, drive, get buy-in, and so on as you move on this journey. And as I said before, if you get it right and you deliver really good outcomes as a result of your data and analytics, then that sponsorship becomes a very easy criteria to meet and to achieve. I think this is really important. I would say even in our own business, when we build data and analytics teams in KPMG, we're constantly under pressure to show value and to keep it as part of an overall strategy. Then getting into the management plans and deliverables, a communication plan. Communication's essential in everything. If you think of your own business and everything you do on a day-to-day basis, success is always driven by clear and constant communication, no different to this. Sponsorship roadmap, again, if it's quite simple, it's just talking to someone quite regularly. If it's, you know, you might be a 1 hour team or half an hour teams meeting per week or something like that. If it's something bigger, then it's a more formal process. Coaching and training, again, as we outlined before. And then resistance management. This is always going to occur no matter what you do. There's always going to be people that don't see the value in it. This is great. You know, this is part of the process, and it's about you need that to make sure that what's being done is done properly and not just a waste of time. So resistance is good, but at the end of the day, it's about trying to really deliver that value and that benefit. And eventually, often those people who are the biggest skeptics often become the biggest supporters. And it's great to always keep that in mind and welcome that sort of challenge because it makes things better. In terms of the individual outcomes, so awareness, you want people to know what you're doing. You want a desired sort of outcome at the end. You want knowledge to be transferred both within the organisation, across the teams. You want those abilities to be there, and you want reinforcement to be in it as well. And then finally, the business outcomes. You can see at the top, you've got the leadership and sponsorship. You've got the project management elements on the left, typical of running a project. And then you've got change management, ensuring the sustainability and longevity of it all. Okay. Going beyond the, yeah, I agree with that too, Andrew. I was losing track of it myself. So it's good to keep in mind, proof of concept's always just the start and generally done quite quickly to demonstrate the value of an idea. But if done correctly, often you'll be in discussions about then what should we do with it next. So moving on from there is often around operationalizing what's been done. How do you, for example, the POC could be taking quite static information, manually uploading it somewhere, and then there's a dashboard or some type of analytic solution feeding off that. But how do we make that more near real time or real time? How do we operationalize it, make sure that data is flowing in? So you get into questions around the architectural design, the technical requirements. And then finally, once you get in beyond that is around production, and then you're really scaling it up. So the pilot sort of working it in a safe, contained environment, it's now really starting to show some interesting results. And then from production, you're then really rolling that out. We as KPMG, we have a really interesting project on the go at the moment. We've been going at POC level. We're now rolling out into pilot. The POCs just generated tremendous insights, and it's just simple visualization of information, large information. Pilot, we're now rolling it out into making that operational. We're integrating the data in real time across different systems, and then it will go into production after that, and the client will take it forward. Our change management plan as part of that is empowering the client to take it from pilot to production themselves. Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, with that, I will pass back now to Vivian.
Thank you, Paul. I think next up we will go into a panel discussion mode. So we just have some questions to discuss with our attendees, and our attendees can ask questions anytime during this panel discussion. And we'll be putting up a poll together for you to participate actively in this session. So we have our first poll up on would you consider yourself a organization that is data driven? So you can put in your response, and I think we can start the panel discussion proper. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Russell, for joining us for today's panel discussion. Would you like to do a quick introduction for yourself? Maybe Paul can go first, and maybe your experience with like cultivating a data-driven culture for the tourism business.
Sure. I feel embarrassed I'm talking too much, so I'm happy to go first. I was happy to go second. So my name's Paul. I know many people now probably through this project. I lead our data and analytics business for KPMG in Singapore. We've got a team roughly of about 20 people working across different areas of data and analytics. The DTP program has been absolutely fantastic. We're really grateful to have had the opportunity to work with STB and the industry as well, and just see all the various interesting things that are going on. A data-driven organisation, I think it's a massive question. In KPMG, we're 3,000 people in Singapore. We're huge. So looking within ourselves internally, we have so much data. Our audit teams collect tremendous amounts of data, and it's very confidential. So data-driven organisation is around how do you store that data? How can you access that data? How can you make sure that it's safe and secure? How can other teams use that data, but in a sense that still the confidentiality is maintained? We're not giving away or violating our non-disclosure agreements with our clients and so on and so on. And then after that, as I've always said, we're consultants, so I think we have it a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, but we're always under high expectations with people we work with. So we must always deliver value. It's always about, how do we really achieve a tangible outcome which justifies our help to an organisation. So data-driven culture is about those different areas for me. It's around the infrastructure you have in place, the governance and the policies you have to make sure it's all rightly used, having the right team to be able to do what you need to do with that data, and then really add value to clients, I think is it. I pass over to Russell.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. My name's Russell Nash. I'm one of the APAC solutions leads for data and analytics at Google Cloud. So my role is to essentially talk to customers and clients about the analytics solutions that we have on Google Cloud. And to Paul's point earlier about IT people can sometimes be a little bit down in the weeds, my role is to try and take the technical aspects of what we do and really explain it in business terms so that we can really understand what is the customer trying to do, what is the business problem that they're trying to solve, and how can they potentially do that with some of the analytics solutions on Google Cloud.
Thanks, Russell and Paul, for your introduction. So I think many of our attendees here today would probably be interested to find out about how they could overcome some of the key challenges in building up a data-driven culture. In fact, for this session, I actually did a research that actually 68% of analysts actually lack the time to implement profit-driving ideas and to actually use the data that they collect for any kind of analysis. It is really difficult because due to the data quality issues and all that. So only 34% of the analysts who collect data actually have the time to access the data and to analyze it. Yeah, and only 50% analyze it. So at this moment in time, we just wanted to review the first poll question on whether how many of you all think that you are a data-driven culture organization. Sean, could you show the poll results, please?
Do you see it?
Not yet. Maybe you could just share with us the poll results, Sean.
I can do it. I can see it actually, Vivian. Let me just share them for you. Yeah. So in terms of the responses, 33 out of 65, so roughly half said yes, they consider themselves to be data-driven, and 13 out of 65 said no. So I'm guessing there's a proportion that didn't answer.
Okay. Yeah. So I think half of them actually share that they are not able to be a full data-driven culture organization. Maybe they have some challenges. So we'll put up the second poll right now on what is the greatest deterrence to your company being a data-driven culture. And then at the same time, maybe for the panelists, we could also discuss on why do you think some of the organizations are actually struggling when they are attempting data transformation. So maybe Paul, from your experience, you can go first. Specific to the tourism sector, 1.5 years in retrospect, with working with a lot of local tourism organizations, what are some of the challenges that you have seen within their organization that deters them from adopting a data-driven approach?
That's a big question. So I would say maybe first, one of the key things we noted across some organizations, and I'm generalizing, so I'm just saying some, was lack of capability. So there was not really sure where to start, not really sure how we should go about it, what we should do. So I think skills and talent is a big one. We saw those organizations that actually had really strong data and analytics teams, and if they're on the call, I don't know who they are. And we worked with them and really enjoyed the process of it. But where they lacked was actually in the governance side of it. So they were collecting a lot of information, but it just didn't really sync up very well. And we had to go through a process to get that happening with them, which was great. So I think skills, governance and policies. I think the last part is sometimes it's just a lack of understanding of the value. So I always feel if someone says, we don't have enough time or it's too costly, those sorts of things. There's two reasons for that. One, it really is just a waste of time and it is too costly. I think that's more of a minority. I think often what it is that there's just the lack of understanding of what could be done and the sorts of initiatives or outcomes, insights you could generate from it, which will justify that effort. So we've worked with organisations that you do something and it shows the value, they will definitely mobilise all the resources at their disposal to try to roll this out, and cost doesn't become an issue because they know if they spend $1, they'll get $5 in return. And I think that's something to keep in mind. I also think that it's not a linear process. It's not something that you do a constant amount of effort all the time. It's like you get processes in place and you get things moving, and there's an initial amount of effort. But once those things are in place, then the marginal amount of effort that's required thereafter becomes a lot less. And keep in mind that these sorts of gains that you get are continuously on a year-on-year basis, while cost can be more of a one-off and maybe a lesser amount. So that would be my areas. And I'd love to hear Russell's views on that as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Paul. A couple of other things that we've seen, and one of these alludes back to an earlier point you made about communication. I think often we've seen traditionally organizations split into the technical people, the data engineers, the data scientists, etc., and the business community. And sometimes you have roles that kind of are designed to span both, so that the technology people can understand what the business is trying to do. But I think where we've seen sometimes customers come unstuck is if those two groups are not communicating effectively. Often the engineering teams will build something that doesn't necessarily align to what the business actually needs. And often some of these projects obviously take a little while, and so sometimes those business needs can change as well and evolve over time. So where we've seen customers really do this well is where there's constant communication and very close communication between the business people who have the domain knowledge of the data and knowledge about what they're trying to do with it, and the engineers and the technical people who are actually able to get the data in, ingest it, transform it, etc. And the better that communication, the better result you get for the organization. That was the first thing. The second thing we've seen is sometimes in organizations we feel like there's not enough of a culture of experimentation. So sometimes people are not encouraged to explore the data and come up with a hypothesis and then follow that hypothesis and see where it takes them, because they feel as though it needs to lead to something, or it's been wasted effort. Where we've seen customers really do well is where they've really tried to encourage people to experiment, to have a hypothesis, to gather the data, to do the analysis. And out of that, sometimes there may be nothing there, and that's totally fine. But sometimes you find the most amazing projects that come out of that, where there's a nugget of knowledge in there that no one had uncovered before, because of that kind of lack of experimentation. And we certainly see that within Google, where people are encouraged to work on areas of the business that might not be necessarily core to their role, but can just kind of follow a hypothesis or a train of thought, and occasionally that leads to great things as well.
Thanks, Russell, for the sharing. I think it's really an issue. And in fact, if you looked at the poll results, we have our poll results out now. Our audience did share that one of the greatest deterrents to their organization is really the people. So they shared that they do lack the in-house data talent as well as the capabilities to actually perform such data transformation within their organization. So I thought that maybe as a next question, we could share with them what are some of the examples or initiative or even resources that are available that could help them to really improve and enhance the capability within their organization. At STB, we are not just asking our stakeholders to hire the data talents, but we do encourage you to actually develop your data talents in-house, bring it from ground up, because these are really the people who know your business very well, and they will be able to see the application of data once they have the app capability to use it within your business. So shall we just quickly share about some of the resources available or initiatives or experience that we have had to help some of our tourism partners enhance their data capabilities? Maybe Russell, you can go first this time.
Thank you, Vivian. I totally agree with the point that you made, Vivian, there, where you talked about trying to encourage taking advantage of the talent that you already have, because we've absolutely found that it's much more effective to take somebody who has domain knowledge of the business and of the data and upskill them technically than it is to take a technical person and try and take them the other way. It tends to work much better if you take people with that knowledge of the business and upskill them. And what we found is that, generally speaking, most people really welcome that. They really value the opportunity to take on a new challenge and to upskill themselves. And not everyone does, but a lot of people really welcome that opportunity, and often they're not given that opportunity to do that. So when you present that as an option for them, they get very excited about that. And we had a case recently with a customer who had a lot of finance people. So the finance people, obviously very well versed in the economics of the business, did a lot of work in spreadsheets, etc., as you would expect. And they started to introduce a system where they could actually get closer access to the data by learning a little bit of SQL. And a few people felt like maybe this was a bridge too far for the finance people, but a lot of the finance folk really got involved in it. They learned it. They then started to organize themselves into communities as well. And this is another key part of it, is they had these communities where they would share bits of knowledge, they share bits of code with each other. And what we found was that they were starting to pull out of the systems much more granular data, much richer data than they'd ever had before, because it had always been presented to them in an aggregated form. And now they had the skills, they could actually go against the raw data. So that was a great example of, as you say, that kind of upskilling of the business people into a more technical domain.
Yeah. Paul, do you have any points to add on this? You have experience with many of our tourism stakeholders, and you see them start to organize themselves into groups like what Russell has mentioned earlier. It seems like quite a natural progression that we have once they kind of identify the values and start to get together into teams to look at some of the business benefits that they can derive out of data.
Yeah, I agree totally. Upskilling is always a great thing to do. It's very cost effective as well, because you have people already in the organization, so you're not having to hire new people. The only other one I would add to it, we do it all the time, is use interns and young guys. I cannot speak highly enough of how clever the young guys coming out of university are these days. And a lot of them are looking, if you approach some of the universities, they have programs where their students need to undertake real life research cases with industry. So they're looking for that sort of placement, young, hungry, clever. Of course, they won't understand a business, but they do understand how to crunch data, and you can link the two together. Often really enthusiastic. Most interns these days will do anything. And if you unleash them with some data for a while, when I was an intern, I could think of nothing better to do when I was young. So yeah, I upskill and use some of the young, clever talent that exists out there. also very cost effective.
Okay, and allow me to plug an advertisement here as well, because I think some of the initiatives that STB has put out to help with our tourism stakeholders. First, we have some of our capabilities program, such as Dash, as well as the Data College. So you can go there to find some resources to help you with your capability enhancement. You can also look out for some of the courses from our local institutions, such as polytechnics, university, or any of those course providers. You are able to actually get some kind of basic data training, data visualization training, or you can even look at Google's resources, such as Grow with Google. They have quite very interesting data understanding and data visualization courses available for free online. So you can just go and take a look at those, and you can actually start to develop and include it into your journey and roadmap on how you can actually improve the capabilities within your team. Okay, so maybe we could go on to the next question on, do you think, during this whole COVID climate, it's really a negative or positive impact on our organization when it comes to doing data transformation? I think the sensing is right now there's quite a bit of bandwidth to really explore this option. So what do you think is a good piece of advice that you guys can offer to our stakeholders when it comes to starting out this data transformation journey right now?
I'll let Russell go first.
Okay, Russell, go first.
Thanks, Vivian. Just to answer the COVID question very quickly, certainly from what we've seen, it's been a huge positive actually from a transformational perspective, because there's been a lot of executive buy-in and a lot of executive sponsorship in getting these initiatives going. So we've had a couple of customers who've said their digital transformation and their data transformation efforts have been accelerated by a number of years because of a real focus on it and funding from it from senior leaders in the organizations. In terms of advice, I think Paul mentioned earlier that everyone's on a different point in the maturity curve, and so I think I would just concentrate on just look ahead of where you are, wherever you might be on that curve. Look at how you can streamline the business, how you can automate the collection of data, so you're not spending time doing the same cleansing tasks every day. The more you can automate, obviously that frees up your people to look at the data. And finally, yeah, just always focus on the business problem that you're trying to solve. It's been mentioned a couple of times, but don't do data transformation just for its own sake. Do it because you're trying to solve a particular problem in your business. Paul?
Yeah, I support that too. So firstly, on the COVID question, it's a massive opportunity in a sense. So there's a business impact component to it. Understand that, but it is what we're in this situation. But for sure, and already we're starting to see the end of that coming. So use that as an opportunity to get ready for the change. Actually, in all of the data we've looked at after sorts of the economic implications of COVID, there's always been massive upturns and pickup in demand, and without a doubt that's coming. You can already feel it. The labour market in Singapore is very tight. Prices are moving up, and so on and so on. It's definitely picking up. So get ready for that. The other thing is we do a global CEO survey every year, and we just finished the one for this year. It's roughly about 1,500 CEOs globally. Without exception, just about 80% of them are saying it's a time to really start looking at digital transformation. So I think it comes back to kind of what Russell was just saying, what we've been saying all along. Where's the business going? And looking at what sort of activities are happening, what's the priorities that are happening within there. Then start looking at, is there ways we can be doing things better, and looking at cost-effective ways of starting some of those actions through POCs. So, as I said, there's upskilling someone, or even just hiring in a young, clever person that can use data. It's quite amazing what can be done. I can give lots of examples of that too. Like we worked with a organization where they were questioning about optimal customer sizes to service the number of people, sales teams they needed to service a customer group. And, you know, simply all we did was we just plotted the data, and the answer is absolutely totally obvious. They've been grappling with this for years. You know, is it 250 per one? Is it 500? Is it 1,000? And you simply plot the average repurchase rate on one line of a graph, and then you see the customer size that sits above and below that average repurchase rate, and you can get the answer. So I'm just saying, like, you can do really simple things which are not, which are young, sort of like an intern and others would be able to do very quickly and easily. So I think these are some of the steps. What are we trying to do? Where do we want to go? What's some of the questions we've always thought about? And then pull in some people to help you to do that. And the POCs are a very good way of trying to demonstrate value without sometimes at very, and sometimes even no cost at all. That's all I would add to that.
Okay, thank you both for your sharing. We'll move on to the next segment. I see that there's quite a number of questions coming in. Continue to keep your questions coming in. We will address them at the end of the session together. So next up, we have one of our panelists who's unable to make it today due to his personal matter, Zishan. So Zishan is in the field of attractions management and consulting. So he will, while he isn't able to come for today's session, he would like to share his insights on how to cultivate a data-driven organization. So I'll just quickly play his videos that he has recorded for us. Nev, maybe you can play the video. Nev, we are having some problem with the video. Could you stop for a while? Yeah. Could you try to replay the video, please? Okay, Nev, maybe you want to play again? Thanks, Zishan, for his video. Right now, we just wanted to get a quick feedback from our audience with regards to today's session before we go on to the next segment. So, Sean, could you just put on the poll? Yeah, so we really appreciate your feedback for today's session and how we can improve. So if you can just let us know what are some of the areas that you are interested and satisfied with. And then we can continue to cater our future Tcube events with regards to your feedback. Okay, next, while you guys are on this survey, we'll go on to talk about the launch of the Data Analytics Capability Development Toolkit. So this is the newest resource that STB has developed for our tourism stakeholders and partners. We have today we launched the Data Analytics Capability Toolkit. So this toolkit, Nev, next slide, please. This toolkit has a lot of frameworks, templates, and methodologies that you can refer. So this toolkit is meant to be used together with your TXI results. Once you have done your TXI results, you can actually input your TXI results into this toolkit. And if you see just now, we put on some Gantt charts about like some of the roadmap that each of the companies can embark on. We have actually included these initiatives and Gantt charts within this toolkit itself. So once you have your results and you know where you stand in terms of your data transformation journey, you can actually reference this toolkit to develop your own roadmap. Next, Nev. So within this toolkit itself, we also have a lot of case studies that you can refer to. So we have it from all of our core industry, including hotels, travel agents, MICE, and also attractions. So you can actually look at it, and we have some resources with regards to data quality, data standardization, even how to build up your own data warehouse. We have included within this toolkit. So right now, I just wanted to give you a real life view of this toolkit. And if you want to download this toolkit, you can actually scan on the QR code here that we have put on the screen. Otherwise, you can actually access this toolkit via our data college. So on our data college, we have a lot of resources, as mentioned just now, with regards to our data transformation journey, including a data governance and management playbook where you can access STB's data, tourism data reference model as well. Okay, so I'll just do a quick share of the real toolkit right now. Okay, so this is the toolkit that I mentioned just now. On this toolkit, we have some of the reading materials here about why data analytics is relevant and important to tourism. So you can take a look here. It's fully clickable, and in between, we have some of the case studies that you can refer to. Otherwise, once you have read through and you have done your TXI, you can do your TXI here. We have linked the link here. You can actually get your TXI results within Stand itself. So you can see your results according to each of the data pillars we have here, including the data-driven culture, the data analytics application, data literacy, and data governance. Once you have your score for each of these data pillars, you can actually input in within your this toolkit. So for example, if let's say your data-driven culture is in the stage of developing, you can click on developing. Once you're in developing, you can actually see some of the key considerations that we have with regards to the data and driven culture for developing. And if you can go to the next slide, we actually have some of the questionnaire that you can think about, and we have some of the reference here that you can actually click on as well. And we have a timeline again chart for you to reference some of the initiatives that you can take on, and you can actually plan these initiatives on your own. You can tweak it according to your organization's needs as well. And for example, if let's say you're looking to build a more comprehensive data infrastructure within your organization, you can also click on data analytics and technology. So if you see, we actually included some of the materials here on, for example, a very played down version of the plans to do a data warehouse right here. And you can also read on some of the data architecture reading that we have attached within this toolkit itself. And we have put in a reference timeline that you can use to develop your data platform and infrastructure. Yeah. So back to the main menu here, based on your TXI score, you can input into each of the scores to see what are the next steps that you can do to do your data transformation journey. Lastly, we have all the use case and examples and case studies that we have developed. So for example, some of the participants who have tried out our framework have done some data projects. So you can actually look at the data projects here and see some of the work that they have done with regards to embarking on their own data transformation journey. Yep. And we have a quick link at the end. So for each of the methodologies, framework, and template, you can actually access them very easily from the last navigation bar. And with regards to some of the data infrastructure tools and resources, we have actually put them here. So for example, if you are interested and keen on learning about what kind of data processing tools you may use, we actually listed some of the commonly used ones here, such as Excel, SQL, SPSS, Talent, etc. Yeah, so with that, that's the end of the sharing for the launch of the toolkit. We really urge you to download this toolkit to play around and have a look. And I think we have no more, as in we have completed the sharing. So just wanted to address some of the questions that you guys had earlier today. So if you still have any questions, you can keep your questions coming. Yeah, so maybe we can take in the first question. Maybe one of our more progressive consultants can take on this question. Paul, one of our stakeholders asked, how should we align the concept of metaverse with data in the local tourism market?
That was a great question. I was going to defer that one to Russell, but anyway, looks like I got it.
Russell can add on to it.
Yeah, the metaverse, I mean, that's definitely the way of the future. AR, VR, and all those sorts of areas is becoming really exciting and evolving into what's, metaverse concepts. I think there's cost considerations about actually utilizing it. It's not cheap technology to install. I think if a business had a particular, focus on that type of attraction, I could see it being really popular. And I'm sure in the future it'll be something that's done very widespread with gaming and everything. I love that sort of stuff myself. In terms of the data side of it, I mean, there's lots of things around, questions around data privacy and all those. You would have seen Facebook's getting questions around that, always has. And there's, I think that though there's also really good opportunities to capture data. So it won't be for everybody. It's as I said, it's an expensive technology, and it'll be for those that are able to use it and has a market that they're focusing on where it plays a role in that. Once it's there, so some of the work we did with the some of the partners was capturing some of the more digital ways that events are being done and so on, which is a little bit different, but still there's a lot of different sorts of data that can be captured through that. That's about all I would say on that one. Pass to Russell.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have much to add to that. I haven't had a chance to dive into the metaverse yet. So yeah, I would agree with the comments that Paul's made.
There's also a question on investigating digital transformation and how currently the companies are appreciating the digital evolution. I think this is really applicable and in context to the COVID situation right now, because COVID has really expedited the process of being onboarded onto like digital platforms. And I think Google yourself, you have been pushing out a lot of new material resources such as like Google Hangout and all that. And with regards to even with regards to data, I think that we have been hearing a lot of our stakeholders talking about like having a lot more data right now to understand their consumers, but they are not so sure about how to appreciate it and use it. So maybe Russell, you could add on this point on like using data to get more value in terms of insights.
Yeah, I think actually one of the interesting comments you made there, Vivian, that I'd love to pick up on is the fact that we've all been communicating remotely, and that's, you know, at first we were all focused on making sure we had enough bandwidth and people could hear us and all that kind of stuff. But once we kind of got past that, a lot of it was about how do we enhance that experience. And so a couple of the interesting kind of add-ons I've seen to that technology is things like, you know, using data to say, in this meeting, you've been talking 65% of the time. Perhaps you should let other people speak in the meeting. Things like that, which kind of really add to the experience of communication. And the other one I love is an add-on where it will actually look into other people's calendars and say, Paul and Vivian have got meetings straight after this one, so therefore make sure that you finish on time, etc. So you can be respectful of people's calendars. So in that respect, I think a lot of the kind of COVID constraints have actually forced us to be a little bit more innovative with how we've used data to make sure that we're communicating effectively.
Thanks, Russell, for your use case. That was really quite an interesting use case, and I'm sure that, you know, with this kind of new insights, our companies and our stakeholders will be able to more innovatively look at data to see how they can use, even in terms of like internal organization and, you know, getting people to contribute more within their brainstorming session. I think that's really a good way to see how they could utilize data as well. Yeah, so with regards to today's session, now it's 2:06, so I do not want to hold anyone back anymore. We'll be sharing today's slides and materials with all the attendees, and I really would like to give a big shout out and thank you to both our panelists today, Russell and Paul, for sharing so much of your insights. Really appreciate your time to share with our stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vivian. Thanks, Russell. Thanks all.
Okay,
Thanks, Vivian. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for coming to this session.